Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. The Practical Guitarist Podcast is brought to you by Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Great Lakes Guitar Pickups provides fantasy tones at prices a practical guitarist will love. Featuring top-notch construction, attention to detail, and a fully custom product, if you can dream it, Great Lakes Guitar Pickups can probably build it. Follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Are you a regular listener? Why not? David here reminding you of all the ways you can participate in the Practical Guitarist Podcast. Subscribe using your chosen podcast app. Review us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Google Play. Find our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Practical Guitarist or on Twitter as @PractGuitarist. Support the show. Merchandise is available in our Threadless store at practicalguitaristpodcast.threadless.com. And donate to us via Patreon, available at patreon.com/practicalguitarist. Reach out to us directly via email at questions@practicalguitarist.com. Hello, Jim.
Hi, David.
I'm having an eventful afternoon. There's many things going on in my life.
Are you?
Some that are frustrating and some that are not. Can we talk about my open mic experience last night?
Sure.
Like the because the video's in the group. If you haven't seen it, of course we have a Facebook group. Join it. Find out all sorts of information, like how to support the show and all that stuff. It's in the announcement section. But seriously, go check it out. We got a cool community. There's about 300 people in there right now. Anyway, so I posted a video last night, and I don't think people realize how serious I was when I said I actually played through a panic attack. Uh-huh. So when I came in, I had to play first. I was playing after the hosts, and then they called me up, and I start panicking because I'm like, oh, I've only got a certain amount of time to set up and play because I knew it was going to be a full house that night. So, of course, it gets quiet, after the house band stops.
Of course.
Then everybody just starts talking and like, uh-oh, what am I going to do now?
Now, they don't have filler music that they're like playing in between?
No.
Oh.
And so that's the first thing I do is I get my looper plugged in and I turn on my my test track,
Right.
I'm like, the sooner they can get that going, the better it's for the audience.
Yep.
So, which I have new test music. I have not put it on my looper yet. It was suggested by my brother, and he will be thrilled when I do it. I'll tell you about it later. Okay. But so the whole idea is that you get all your stuff together, you get it on stage, and you start plugging in and run around. There's cables everywhere, and I'm having some issues with my Kemper and the output level and it being an XLR cable, a mic or line level. So I told him it was line level. He flipped it over. Everything was working great. Had to adjust the volume. Had to go into the menus and kind of deep edit to get things working properly. And so I was kind of freaking out. And by the time I actually got to where I could play, I was pretty frustrated and like I was well into the realm of freaking out at that point. I was starting to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
And that's when I got up and like played the first couple bars of another song that was on my test track just to make sure that the levels are right. And then I looked to Andy, who's the host there, and I was like, am I ready? And he's like, yeah. And then I almost immediately realized I had like this horrendous headache and I could feel the vein running across the front of my forehead. And I started to panic because I'm like, oh no, like I'm having a panic attack on stage. So you then start panicking about having the panic attack.
Yeah, you're panicking about panicking.
And then I just go, right? So I make mistakes all over the place all night last night. Yep. Because the first two songs, I was literally panicking about the fact that I was having a panic attack and my headache got worse. So by the end of song one, I thought I was going to have to quit. I thought I was going to have to get hauled off the stage and go for a trip to the ER. I managed to make it through song two, and then by song three, I started settling in the middle of it, and I think I finished song three real strongly, and then I played Purple Haze at the end, and I managed to do a decent job at that, even though the microphone was turned off.
Really?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I know. I've been told.
I mean, that was incredible because if that microphone was off, you were
it was off.
Out.
Yeah, it was off. I'm loud anyway, so it was not hard for me to project, but yeah, it was off. Or it was super low, like to the point where people could not tell it was even coming out of the PA. So everything was cool. I got off stage. I went immediately. Actually, my mother was at the show, and she always has Tylenol with her. I grabbed painkillers from her immediately and slammed them down, and then went and stood outside in the cold and rain, like cool rain, to kind of relax and cool off. And the rest of the night was great. Great performers there last night. Met some interesting cats and hung out with a lot of the regulars. You know, they're there every week. My
Just
cat
when you
is,
said cats,
my cat
your
is
cat
showing
put his
you.
butt right in his
Yeah, he's showing you his anus right now. That is a cat anus. If you couldn't tell, he's looking for my burrito that I finished no more than 2 to 3 minutes ago. I have scavengers for cats. They're kind of dog cats. But anyway, so yeah, other than that, everything was cool. Threw everything back in my road cases. It was great because my flight case is waterproof. So I didn't even have to worry about the rain. It poured rain yesterday. Flooding update in the Hill residence. So this is the shenanigans that kept me off the show. As you probably heard, I did do a little bit of an addendum to last week's episode, but I wanted to let everybody know what was going on. A couple people reached out to me and let me know that they were worried about my situation and everything. But so here's the deal. Go to the insurance company. Insurance company says, we need some information from your association. I'd already gone to the association, so I went back to the association and filed a complaint and said, I need to get this straightened out. And the insurance company says that you may be responsible for it. And so they're kind of butting heads. In the meantime, the association basically says they're not going to help me. They call the front wall of my house what they call limited common property, which basically means that I own the front wall of my unit, despite the fact that it is also the front wall of the unit above me and the front wall of the unit above that. So they're wrong, first and foremost. I want to make this very clear. I've talked to several attorneys and they're wrong on it because actually the way it's worded, it's not my responsibility. It is my building's responsibility and not necessarily the responsibility of the association. So the way I read it and the way that the lawyer that I showed it to read it was basically, no, you're going to have to share the cost with the other two units probably. Like that's what this sounds like, that they're misreading this and they're obviously not lawyers. Which I'm like, okay, fine. If that means that we have to pay $50 a month extra for the next 3 years to get a new front on the building or whatever it's going to take, I'll take care of it. Right. But here's the real kicker on the flooding problem, right? Mm-hmm. So, we knew what was causing the flooding. We knew it straight away, but we really weren't sure. I stripped away about 2 feet of drywall off of one wall. When it says it's a short wall, it's only about a foot and a half wide, and that was where the flooding was occurring. So I stripped the drywall away and I pull out the insulation, and there's cement behind it, and it goes up about 18 inches, and there's like 3 or 4 inches at the top. Well, the water was coming in over where the cement starts, so I'm going, well, clearly the water's coming in there. It did not correlate with a hole on the outside of the building, but actually, as it turns out, my drainage pipe was spewing out the top, and we'd known about it for a while because there, like a bird's nest or something had gotten lodged in it, or just debris. It happens. You have to have your gutters cleaned every once in a while. Yeah. And something got lodged in it. So I had filed a complaint. The building said they had come out and cleaned it out on Monday. The building lied. We had pictures of the thing on Tuesday with debris sticking out of it still, very obviously still clogged. So I complained. They were out here. It rained on Saturday, but it also rained on, I think, Thursday or Friday. But anyway, they were out here actually fixing it, I believe, Friday morning. And they gave us a brand new drain pipe. Saturday night, poured for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. Did not have a drop of rain enter my condo. So we know it was the drain pipe, which means that basically the association is going to have to cover it because their drain pipe caused the flooding in my condo. Right. Now, they probably will not cover the building repair, which I'm not as concerned about because now that the drain pipe is fixed, I can fix that for $20. I just literally take some concrete sealant and be done with it. But the drain pipe situation is resolved, and so therefore they can fix my carpet and they can fix my condo for the damage that their drain pipe caused. So there's that. That's the most positive thing that has happened to me in the last 10 days. Wow. Oh, I'm finally not sick, Jim. I feel good right now. I don't feel sick anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sick, which is weird because I was.
It's only going to last about 24 hours. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's a 24 instead of a 24-hour.
24 hour feeling better.
Yeah. So I'm silencing my phone here. So I'm looking on Guitar Center's site. So I told you, but I'm going to tell the audience, I'm going to be working part-time with Guitar Center through the Christmas holidays and such to get, well, really to get a discount. I mean, I'll get a little extra money, but it's really about the discount. And what did I find while I was there? A 12-string Rickenbacker in walnut. And I was like, oh God, this thing is gorgeous. And then I made a mistake of playing it. So,
Jim, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you need it?
No, but I yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. Yeah. Excuse me. So things are going to come together, but I might be eating ramen noodles for about 2 weeks between now and then. I'm paying off my car. I don't care how much I owe. So I'm going to take my car and pay it off this month. That's the objective. So no matter what it is that's left, I'm paying it off. I don't want a car payment through the holidays.
Oh, so you're not going to buy the Rick then?
No, not right now. If it's there when I have the cash, though, I don't know.
It might be. It might stick around.
It might be. It's
kind of an odd
the beauty of it is that not only is it a 12-string Rickenbacker, you've seen a bunch of 12-string Rickenbackers in your time. It is a walnut satin walnut finish, and I got to tell you, in person, the picture on the website sucks. It's terrible, but they don't have a picture of the actual guitar. This is probably a Rickenbacker provided photo that they gave, so it looks kind of. It's actually a really dark walnut. I'll put it in the group. I'll put a post up of it. And I stood next to that used cabinet that has 24 speakers in it.
Yeah.
So I stood next to it. I didn't get a picture.
Can you stand inside of it?
No, I thought it would be taller than what it was.
I thought it would be taller.
Yeah, and so even with casters on it only comes up to about here on me, and I'm only 5'7". So,
so let me stop.
I say here, folks, just about 4 inches under my neckline.
Is it? How many 12s are in it?
Those aren't 12s. Those are like little, like 6-inch speakers.
Oh, okay.
24 of them though.
24 by 6.
That's a lot of friggin' speakers.
So it's like 4.
So if you think about it though, it's only 6 speakers tall.
Yeah, it's 6 speakers tall, but it's
for 8
4
speakers
wide.
Tall, 3 wide, or 6 speakers tall and 4 wide.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not that big. I thought it would be bigger. I thought that the cabinet would be bigger.
Well, I thought we were talking 12s or something when we talked about the last time. So
yeah, no, I have seen.
Who would do that?
I didn't get in there in time to see it. It was already gone when I got there. I don't know who bought this thing, but there was a Sun in there with 8 10-inch speakers.
Yeah, but it's Sun 8x10. Like, so you get 8x10s in bass amplification all the time.
Yeah, that's what both of them are. Bass amplifiers. Or bass cabinets. It was pretty cool. It had the matching or Ampeg, I'm sorry, but it had the matching Ampeg head, and I think somebody bought it either to have it in a studio because there are studios around here, or to have it's collectors. There's a lot of collectors in this area. It's interesting that because we're not really a big area. Virginia Beach is relatively small. I mean, there's only the whole Hampton Roads area, I think, has just over 1.5 million people, which is not really a lot of people.
No, it's not a ton. We have.
You got how many people in Chicago?
20-something million.
Yeah, there's. Well, I don't know if you count your whole area. Yeah, you probably have that. I mean, in New York City, I think there's 9.5 million people in New York City.
I'm Googling. I want to find out because I want to have the actual. No, I don't want to go to Wikipedia. I just want you to give me a freaking. How many people
give me the
live
census.
Here? Like, seriously, just how many people live here? Like,
yeah, Chicago census.
Metro Chicago said 22,000. There's no way. 9.5 million people.
Yeah, so there's 2.7 million people in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
That's realistic. So you've got more people in that little city. And the city of Chicago, being as big as it is still relatively small compared to the many miles that...
Yeah, it's like 15 miles...
Hampton Roads is.
15 miles north to south and like 10 miles east-west. I mean,
yeah, our whole what they call Tidewater area or Hampton Roads Tidewater area. There's always been this even back when I lived here in the 80s, they didn't know whether to call it Tidewater or Virginia or not Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads. So anyway, there's about 1.5 million people in the Hampton Roads area, and I think there's only 750,000, maybe 500,000 in Virginia Beach. So we all kind of share it. There's Suffolk, Portsmouth, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Hampton, Chesapeake, Newport News. I mean, we got all
geography. We're geography podcasting. These guys will be proud.
Yeah, the 60 cycle hum guys would love us. We are totally off the rails. You're welcome. You're welcome, Ryan. We love you.
Yeah, we talked about flooding and.
Yep. And the only thing we haven't talked about is beer. So, Steve, you got to send us some beer so we can send us some recommendations to drink.
I have to drink some beer. Like I've never done that before.
Have you never had beer?
No, one time, twice,
really,
3 times.
One time, twice. One time, 3 times?
Yeah, 3 times. I think it was like 3 times. I have to. 3 times, a beer drinker. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's been 3 times I think in my life. Once when I was younger. Once when I was like my 20s at some point, and then once when I was like. 30.
I honestly don't think I've drank beer 3 times this year.
Yeah,
but the year's not over, so
okay. Jim, I think you might have drank beer on the podcast 3 times.
I think I drank. Yeah, that's really actually when I drink beer. I think I had a beer one time at an open mic this year, and it was. Yeah, I don't like to drink and sing. I don't like to drink and play. If I have 2 beers, I don't know how to play a G chord.
Well, if you want to see what it's like when I'm drunk and play, you could probably just watch that podcast or that open mic for the other night.
Yeah, that would be.
It's pretty bad,
but
pretty bad.
maybe Sam Miller could suggest a beer. He's a. But you got to remember, Sam, I'm on the East Coast, so it's got to be something that's.
Anybody recommend Jim a beer? He'll drink.
One beer.
He'll drink till he falls asleep on the show.
That's pretty much what happens.
He's done it before.
Okay. So I'll be working at Guitar Center, Virginia Beach, once the background check comes through, which I can't imagine it coming through negative, but hey, whatever. We never know what's going on. Never know if we've been swatted or doxxed or whatever it is that people do nowadays to get your your information.
How I would I can't remember. I was gonna say the line from I guess it's Holy Grail. Oh no, it is from Life of Brian, where the guy's in the thing and he's like, "How I wouldn't love to be spat hat in the face, like how I wouldn't love to be swatted."
Yeah, I love the one where he says, "No one is to stone anyone until I blow this whistle."
Yeah, dude. So I heard a story. I think I should share this story on the show, but I'm not going to say who told me this story. So somebody I know, they sold a piece of gear through a store on Reverb, and the individual on the other end claimed that there was damage to it. So they ended up getting $50 back from the seller as a guitar, and then he promptly relisted the item on Reverb for I believe $100 more than, or it was like basically with $100 profit margin, right? You're using the guy's original pictures. Yeah. I have asked this individual to give us this person's Facebook name. I think, or not Facebook name, but their Reverb name. I think we should have a running list in our announcements. In the comments of like bad transactions, so that people know not to buy from these people. So if anybody feels like that's a good idea, please, make a thread and I'll put it in the announcement section. Because I do not want to see people get burned and have people act a fool like that. It was one thing if you're going to resell it and like make money off it, but don't scam the person and then use their photographs. It's just insane.
That is funny on so many levels.
Yeah, so
many levels. Well, I've been still watching that Parker fly on Facebook Marketplace. I saved.
He can't stop, folks. He can't.
I know. It's.
You get that Katana Mark II yet?
This is what I got. Yeah, I got one on order. No, Okay, yeah, that's what I want to talk. So that's
I know that's where we're going,
but I want to go. I want to go use so locally. I've seen a few of these now where people are listing Epiphones and then they say Gibson.
Yeah,
I'm like,
but that's just
it's either Gibson or it's an Epiphone. I know that there was. See, this one has it. It says Gibson on like the truss rod cover.
yeah. Most of them did for a long time. Almost all the ones I've ever seen were like that. So
Yeah, so I don't know when, what year this would be.
heck, I had an Epiphone came with a Gibson gig bag.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen the same thing. This is a nice looking guitar but it doesn't. From the look of the stickers, it does have Grover tuners, real Grover tuners. But when did they stop? They stopped putting Gibson on the truss rod covers in coming out of.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be the mid. It had to be like
ago.
mid 2000s.
Yeah.
But this could be. I mean, they've been making guitars under the Epiphone license for like since the 90s. So
he said, "I bought this brand new years ago and never learned to fully play."
Probably true.
$500.
And you know what?
But it looks beautiful. It looks like it's got a gorgeous top.
All right. Let me stop him right there.
Yeah.
You're selling a used Epiphone for $500.
I know. That's
clearly you don't understand the value proposition here. You know, you get that with people. Like I see a lot of beginner guitars that get listed like that, where they're super expensive because they don't know what they have, and the person literally never really learned to play guitar and like didn't know anything about it, and so now they put it up and they say, "Well, these are Gibsons." No, it's an Epiphone. It's not.
It's an Epiphone. Oh, there's a Boss. Speaking of loopers, by the way, there's a Boss RC1.
Nope.
Okay, hold on. You haven't seen the price tag on it. $1,234,567, which means the person doesn't know. We'll trade for a Boss tremolo or reverb. Hit me up.
He's really looking for a trade, not looking.
He's looking for a trade. You know why he's not looking to sell? He knows that there's no money in that thing.
Yeah. So
the guy that had the Parker on here for like $800 brought it down to $750, brought it down to $700, brought it down to $675.
When are you gonna buy it, Jim?
He's now down to $650.
Just reach out to him and be like, I'll give you $600 and just call it a day.
Yeah, if it's there next month, I will probably buy it. I will probably just hand him the $600.
Yeah, I mean, you'll make money if you sell it at that point.
Because I would definitely buy it for. Well, it doesn't have the original gig bag. It's an Fender Stratocaster. I know. It's an Fender Stratocaster hard case, which is actually a good thing.
That's better than a gig bag.
Exactly, because those are always
especially for shipping if you're going to resell it.
Yep, and it's down in Moyock, North Carolina. It's a '97 LV2.
Yeah. We
NFV2.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous guitar. It's got he says there's small blemishes, but they're not showing up on the pictures. So I don't know. I definitely want to give it a look and a listen and see what it feels like.
All right.
It's got the original Spurzel locking tuners.
Yeah.
All the good stuff that's on.
Yeah, it's stuff you get on a Parker. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about something people actually want to hear about. That's so awful. Jim, your hopes and dreams mean shit to me.
Nobody wants to hear about this thing. Oh my God.
Jim,
okay,
nobody cares about your stupid Parker, okay?
Just as everybody knows, only a few weeks ago, I just bought a freaking Boss.
Jim bought a Boss Katana
100 for the freaking third time, right?
And he has the right to use the F word on that one.
Did I say that? Yeah.
You firkin.
I meant to say frackin'. Anyway, for the third time. And what happens? They send me an email. Natty natty boo boo, stick your head in doo doo. That's what the freaking email felt like. Hey, look what we've done. We've released
I'm definitely playing devil's advocate on this one. Let me tell you.
Mark II. So, what does the Mark II come with? Ladies and gentlemen, tell them what you get for Mark II.
Well, you probably know better than I do, because I don't think you get
two
much.
Voicings. No, you get 2 voicings per amplifier. Plus, you get an acoustic, like everybody wanted on the first one, acoustic emulation for an electric. Okay, that's not worth.
That's useless. I didn't know that they gave.
Useless.
I didn't know that they gave us that. I was just talking about the acoustic mode in the group. So if you're
Yeah.
basing off what I said, then that's wrong.
Yeah, that's something that Anderton showed.
Okay.
I'll have to relook, but
So
I'm
it's the acoustic
almost 100%.
simulator built in.
Yeah, they built an acoustic emulator because it used to have the acoustic input. Well, it
Right,
still
which
does,
was just
but now
an
you can.
acoustic amplifier, like basically so you could plug your
Why
acoustic
have
into it and it'd be
two-
flat.
Right. So since you're going to have AB on there, build the acoustic emulator into it. That's a given. So then, excuse me. Then they put the next thing that they put in it was they put a so each, like I said, each amp model has two voices. I listened to Anderson's thing twice because somebody said, "Oh, there's a difference." I hear a difference. I hear a difference at all. And Honore was trying his best to go, look, it sounds. I was like, oh, maybe in the room, Pete. I hear it.
I've heard other clips online, and I can hear it. Like it's
Yeah.
it's like, you know,
It's-
an OCD version 2 versus an OCD version 4. They're not night and day different, but they're not
nothing you
intended to
couldn't
be.
EQ. It's nothing you couldn't EQ into it. Though.
I don't know, because without having played it and knowing how it responds, like that's hard to say. But I will say
Right.
this: they didn't market it as like an additional amp model. They said variation. Like they made it really
Right.
clear that it's supposed to be like the same amp model, but maybe like a slightly different
Right.
take on it.
And they did say that.
So
honestly, I don't think it's anything you couldn't get. It's still not a game changer. Still not.
that was Boss trying not to like slap the people that already have the Katana. Basically, was like, if we put new models in it, people are going to be ticked off. Now, I will say this much. I think that those are GT 100 models that were in sneaky amps that were the original models that they based the Katana off of. Like when they took the Katana's modes, basically they took those original models and they modified them. And so that's the Katana version, and this is the GT 100 version. I think that's what they did.
I honestly, now of course I haven't tried to do this yet. I honestly think you can get the second model out of putting the drive pedal into. In other words, the OD1, the OD2, they're there.
No, I don't think that's what that is. What I'm saying is they had, so if you didn't know about this, you can install a patch or you can use a piece of software that allows you to get all of the models that are in the GT100 on your Katana because they're already on the chip. It's literally the same chip from the GT100, right? Right. And so it has the same software on it. All you have to do is access them with like, I think it's MIDI hex codes. And that's how you bring them into existence. And then you save them to each of your panel locations. And then when you're ready, you can just hit the button and you pull up a preset that's got, you know, that Plexi model or the, you know.
Yeah. In other words, you could hack the current one.
Basically, yeah. And I think what they did was they just made this hack something that you can now buy, which is what they should have had originally. And
again, that goes to where I said this is all stuff they could have done with software so far.
Yes.
So far,
and that's what I'm saying.
Everything I've mentioned has been a software upgrade. Everything I mentioned could be in the Boss One, and they should give it to the Boss, the original
Mark
Boss
One,
because whatever you want to call it. So the two, which by the way, to be able to, at least they did this. I do appreciate the fact they did this. You can tell you got a 2 because it has like little sergeant stripes underneath has two little sergeant hashtags underneath. Well, I'm talking about right from the front.
Yeah.
It's got 2 little sergeant hashtags.
I think they look terrible, to be honest with you. I think they should have left the logo alone, but
I'm just saying that it's right there in front of you. You can tell right away. It's silver. And it's got, I don't even have mine here because I got it in the rehearsal place, but it's silver now and it's got 2 little hashtags under it, like sergeant stripes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on. Yes, the knobs are different because now the knobs are like dual knobs. So
well,
like
some of them are concentric pots. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, and an inner knob. So there's that for the effects. At least the 3 effects are the 3 effects knobs. So you can now, instead of having to dial the knob until you get green and amber and red,
you can select.
You just push the little button and it'll go to it. Something, again, they can't do with software, but you can do in your software.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the way that Line 6 did it years ago where you would hold down a button and then you could turn the knob and it would get additional parameters.
Yeah. So they've done that. It's a nice feature. Is it worth upgrading? No. So far, I've given you nothing worth upgrading. Nothing.
I don't
If I
know.
was boss-
For some people, that might be a game changer. I think for some people, if you're an effects heavy person and you're looking to do the katana, like use the katana for everything, that might be a feature for you.
Yes, if you're doing it from the top of the amp. So now the last thing, because you can do all that from the software, and you can select all those with a GAFC.
Well,
if you have a GAFC,
I will go out on a limb and I'll say, you know what, they should never have put together those features in the amp that had to be require a computer to be plugged into it, because they have made and I'm going to say this, and I don't want people to get frustrated, but they have made a colossal mess out of getting the katana to connect up with the computer. There have been, I can't tell you how many bugs where, like, for a couple of weeks the software was unavailable. I think at least 3 at this point.
Yeah, there was a few weeks where it was completely unavailable, like to any Windows users.
Yeah.
And when it first came out, you couldn't get it for Windows, if I remember right.
Yeah, that sounds correct too.
So they were like, well, we've got this software, but you can't use it.
Not yet.
Which will get me to my next thing, because my iPhone is the same thing right now. Anyway, so then you have the fact that there's an added. Now, the GAFC is exactly the same. You don't have to buy a different GAFC if you buy a Katana Mark II versus the Katana Mark I. The GAFC is exactly the same, but the little sticker, which I mentioned in my unboxing, when I'm like, well, the sticker doesn't matter because it's how the GAFC is labeled already now. The GAFC now has a different button. One of the buttons that did one
reassigned,
thing has been reassigned. So, and I don't know if I think they said they took away the tap tempo button and they did something with it. I'm like, why would you take away the tap tempo button?
That sounds like the one thing you would want.
Button that I wouldn't take away from people is tap tempo, but whatever. I don't really care. And you still have all the other stuff. So really, literally the only thing that would push, and it wouldn't push me, but could possibly push somebody, is this new stereo ability where you can buy one and slave the 2. So I went to Guitar Center because they have the 50 watt on display.
Let me tell you a story about that in a minute.
Yeah. So they have the 50 watt on display, and it does have it in the 50. But I'm like, I'd have to buy a second 100 to be able to do that. I don't see anything in it, because if you were going to stereo this thing, if you were in the market for a stereo rig, it's possible. I'm not enough in the P&W scene yet to be able to tell, but I don't see the use of it. It doesn't excite me in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Does it? But that said, I guess that they just said, take the ones off the shelves and put the 2s out there, because the ones are gone from my local stores.
Yeah, they DC'd them pretty quick. I think they've been selling stock out of them for a while. It sounds like Boss had pretty much informed pretty much the entire media community way ahead of time that this was going to happen.
Oh, of course.
And so that's part of the reason why.
You think Robert would have said to me on the side, "Hey, Jim,
no,
Robert, you just bought one, but you need to return it because you're gonna know why in about 3 weeks."
Yeah, well, there were actually people that got told that, and I've heard of people getting their katanas returned if they bought them in the last 90 days. In fact,
I might call Sweetwater and say,
I would call them up and I'd be like, "What the hell?" And just see what happens. But
yeah,
maybe
they give me a discount or pay for my shipping or something. I don't know.
Anyway, so here's my thing, right? Here's my hot take. I was frustrated, but I wasn't frustrated because they come out with a new version like that. I don't care about that at all. In fact, I actually think some of the features in the new version are pretty attractive. I think the power amp in, it's different than the effects return. I understand impedances, and I understand that would be something that's a feature that a lot of people would actually really get some use out of. Now that to me would be like the one thing that I was really interested in. The stereo effect thing, they can take that and shove it up their butts. Let's be honest here. I know people talk about running stereo rigs live. I have never actually seen someone do this. And I've been going out quite a bit, like especially lately, where unless you're going to a paid show where you're paying good money to see a band, they might have like 2 amps, but generally it's not the same amp. Like they want to do something where there's a little bit of separation, unless they're doing wet, dry, wet, and then in which case they might have like a 1 amp for the dry signal and then 2 amps for the wet signal. But in reality, like I think stereo guitar is really more reserved for people who run to the board. And I know people are going to like yell at me and say, no, I do it all the time. Like, listen, I've done it in my house too, but it's just a lot to deal with going to a gig. Especially when you're, playing in bars. I mean, I've been on stages where you couldn't fit 2 amps.
Now, I've been at a church where they were using a stereo rig, and the truth of the matter is, there's still not enough separation for me to tell. And I'm not talking about a little church either. I'm talking about a big church, plenty of separation. But the problem is that with the choir and the everything else that's going on, in all reality, the ambience is probably stereo, but it's not enough for me to care about.
Well,
in the truth.
I mean, it's not that. These people have this obsession with getting a bigger sound, and yes, you can get a bigger sound if you're blending 2 different amps together. There's a lot
that I've done,
and
I've done that.
You know what though? Like this is the one thing that I don't think people realize. If you've never done it, first off, the amps have to be in phase, which people don't seem to understand. That like a deluxe reverb may not be in phase with your Epiphone Valve Junior, for example, or something crazy like that. It was an example of something similar I had done where I discovered, oh, this isn't in phase. Like, what am I going to do now? And the same thing can happen with running two drive pedals in parallel. If you have like an ABY splitter or whatever, and you're dividing out to them, I've run into that stuff, and I can tell you, like, it's not a cut and dry solution. That was the first thing I realized about the ES8. Yeah, you could deploy pedals in parallel with the ES8. So I was thinking, oh, I could put an overdrive with a fuzz and stack them. But I quickly realized, no, because they're out of phase. Like they were, for whatever reason, they were out of phase. Like whether it was the cable length or whatever, and you start fighting these like little problems. I can't imagine a bar band, or much less a praise and worship group, like running amps in stereo every day that they did it without having worked out those kinks, and that's a lot of work. If you do it and it's great, more power to you. I just don't think for the average person that's a feature that's like, oh, this is a game changer. I don't think it's going to sell many units. I do think it's something that people might take advantage of if they already have them. And I could definitely see, look, I know some guys locally that use a Katana, and I wouldn't be surprised if they wouldn't buy 2 of them because they're cheap. Yeah, I got 2 of the same amp, so if one breaks, I got the other one. That kind of thing. And if they can take advantage of one of them by doing a stereo deployment like that, that's cool. But I just don't think that the idea of using stereo effects is really worth that kind of hassle. Because for me, like I use the Kemper. Obviously, we've talked about it on the show enough. It's stereo out. I haven't used it as an open mic in stereo yet, but I've used it in my house. It sounds great. But I've never had that effect running 2 amps with like a mult reverb, where I have like a stereo left and right for the reverb pedal, because you're not running them out front. It really becomes this whole thing of like, yeah, you can do it and it'll sound cool because this thing has a slave out, but I don't know how feasible it is.
Right. So I've used a slave with stereo or a head when I was doing stuff.
Didn't they take the kickstand?
Abs.
Didn't they?
Oh, I think they took the kickstand.
Yeah, which is fine because the kickstand was just a joke anyway.
It was useless. Yeah.
They should have made the kickstand longer or done it like the Fender tilt back.
The truth is that if I could get out of mine and get into a new one for a few dollars, I might do it. But if it cost me more than $50, I don't think I'd bother. I'd bother.
So, and the other thing is like the used value. I don't know where that's going to settle, but I still bet I'll probably get $250 when I sell my head. I figure I'll probably get $250 for the head. Now I paid, I think $270, $280. You probably go back and listen to the episode where I bought it. It was last year's Gear Fest, not this one. And I'll probably mention how much I paid for it. But it was it was not a significant investment. So if I get $250 out of it when I sell it, like I'll be thrilled.
Did they change the price on them, or did they?
Yeah, they
just
went
keep-
up because of the tariff thing, but I think that they didn't go up a whole lot. I think they went up like $50 or something.
So the Katana 100 right now. That's the 100 regular. So that's $359 still.
Yeah.
I don't see. Oh, here you go.
Because they were $329.
So the Mark II. Yeah, the Mark II is $359. So they're they're selling them for the same price. Honestly, if somebody's going to look at them, Boss has got to let Sweetwater and places like this go. Yeah, we'll bring the price down.
Well, I mean, I don't think they're underpriced. I think they are the option if you have less than $400 to spend on an amp. Like, there really nothing else below that class really makes a whole lot of sense unless you're going to buy used. If you buy used, you're going to get a 1-channel amp, which for maybe a lot of people that's okay. But I just think like for an amp that's flexible, can play gigs, can do things at home, and it's for the weekend warrior, maybe the once a week or twice a week, or twice a month gigger, like that might work out great for you. The Katana might be the thing for you.
I just think that right now is a great time. If you're thinking about getting a Katana, is a great time to leverage the fact that if you want to get a 1, you're not worried about those features.
Yeah, you can probably get them.
You should be able to leverage that
for about one down, like
$60 less or whatever. New, if you're looking at new, and whatever for used. I mean, used. I don't think that the used price is going to be affected that much just yet, only because the new ones aren't used yet. You don't have any new ones on the market yet. Give it another week.
Man, can I just say I really love amplifiers?
I love amps.
I do. I
like them a lot.
Plugged into my
there's a Mesa Boogie Lone Star special for $1,000.
I plugged into my Mark V yesterday for the first time in like 4 or 5 months.
I had this guy cranking last night,
and it was like
my windows were open. It
was like finding an old friend. And I almost took that to the open mic because I was like, it doesn't get enough love. And it's not that, like I was talking to Jeff about it today. And I said, it's not that the Kemper sounds bad or anything like that. The Kemper's great. And I can get those sounds out of my Kemper when I put on my Mark V patches through my cabinet. But because I don't use my cabinet a lot with my Kemper, I was definitely preferring the sound of the Mark V through my cabinet than the Kemper through other profiles through my cabinet. When I switch over to the Mark Pro, it's the same thing, so it didn't matter anyway. But
yeah, so I watched an interview with Phil X.
No, this week you lost me.
Yeah, I know. So Phil X, okay, regardless of what people think of Phil X as a person, he is an incredible guitar player, and I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a good guy. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't know him. I wouldn't know him from Adam.
I don't care for his playing.
I've never had tea.
I know you think his playing might be good or bad. I don't think his playing's. I just don't care for it.
Yeah, honestly, I've never cared for any of his original stuff.
I don't care for anything I've heard him do.
Leave it there. But he's all right. As far as, let's face it, Bon Jovi likes him, so whatever. He's making a lot more money than I am.
Sure.
So anyway, he's talking about how, because he tours with Bon Jovi, right?
Apparently.
And he was talking with, who the hell was he talking to? Geez, it was one of your regular, it was That Pedal Show guys. So
now you really lost me.
Now you got snobs talking to snobs, right? Because you got the Pedal Show guys who, well, we don't talk down about everything, but yeah, we do. Anyway, so That Pedal Show guy, Dan, who seems to be at least the more accessible of the two, is sitting there talking to Phil X.
Yeah, Mick is definitely not accessible.
Yeah, Mick is the biggest. I've never had beer with the guy, and I don't think
you won't because he's a cork sniffer. He only drinks wine.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, I can imagine that he's only out there with tea and wine and champagne, and his Dom Perignon has been, probably
his Tonal Dom Perignon.
Yeah,
that's the name of his episode.
I just can't stand. I'm sure he actually probably is a nice guy. It's just he comes across. I don't even know if he knows how he comes across to most people. And they've been called snobs by more than one person because they're always like, yeah, somebody called us a snob this week. So I'm not the only one because I don't go on people's channels. I got my own channel. I can call them snobs here. So anyway, he's interviewing Phil X. And this gets to something we had the group this week about John Mayer. So Phil X is sitting there and he's like, yeah, well, because they were talking about modeling and how modeling has moved on. And Phil X goes, well, models suck. And he just goes on to like pummel models, which I don't take personally. I don't give a shit. He's not in my shoes. I'm not in his shoes.
I have some we can
but here's
tie
what he
into
said.
this conversation.
But this is what he said, and that's where we could go right to the John Mayer thing.
Get him.
He goes like this. He goes, well, I don't have to worry about paying for cartage and so on and so on because
John takes care of it for me.
John Bon Jovi takes care of it for me. I just go back there and do my thing, and then I show up and they pay for everything. And he's like, so I have it so good, I don't even know what it's like to. And so he at least admitted,
yes,
I've got so many people kissing my feet and sucking my toes that I don't have to worry.
Can I take over when we talk about the other guy?
Oh yeah, you can have it when we get to Mr. Mayer. Because I'm going to take the flip side on that one. But anyway, so
you're going to lose.
Well, I'm just saying, at least he admitted, yep, I'm a snob. But here's something he did say that I agreed with. He said, if you've never been, and I've been there, you've never been on a stage with a bunch of, with power amps cranked, they're doing their thing for you on the stage. He goes, you can never know what it feels like to know what you can never know what that feels like to play the amp as an instrument. And I was like, well, I do know how. And I've only had, I think the most I've ever had is 2 heads. They were slaved. That's what I was talking about before. 2 heads slaved with 8x12. So it was 2 Marshall heads with a JMP that was slaving the 2 power amps. So I get it. And I understand what he's saying, where certain points of the stage are more magical than others when you're standing. Yeah. But that was the complaint that Randy Rhoads made to Sharon Osbourne when she said, "Oh, we're going to set the stage up. It's going to look like a castle and all these other things." He's like, "Well, where are you going to put the amp?" She goes, "Under the stage." He was like, "What? I can't play the guitar the way I'm used to playing guitar," because he's used to not just playing the guitar, used to playing the amp. And that's exactly what he was saying. I was playing, you were talking about how, you missed your Mark V. I was playing my Marshall, and I was like, I'm not getting what I want out of this. So I just turned it up and I said, now I've got it. Now it's doing what I want it to do. Right. So, and I'm just saying that there are points when you really want that. You want that power. You want that to go. So we had John Mayer had made a comment.
Yeah.
Now it's your
let me rebut Phil X. Was he a porn star? Anyway, so let me rebut this guy.
He only has 1 X.
Yeah, well, he's gonna have,
which by the way is
2 more if somebody gets a hold of him.
It's a made-up rating, by the way. For those who don't know, the X rating is actually a made-up rating.
Yeah, it probably is.
Well, it was in the beginning. I don't know if
I don't care. So yeah, Phil X, like, all right, yeah. So you get on stage in front of really, really loud amps, and of course it causes your guitar to feedback. But you don't think you're getting that at lower volumes? Like, honestly, I've stood in front of a 2x12, 175 watt 2x12 cranked to halfway, and I can tell you right now, that's the same feeling. Your pant legs move. Okay, and that's great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You get simulated, or you get the feedback loop, going on, and that's wonderful. But if you have to rely on that to get through a gig, you're probably not going to be doing so hot in the next 10 years of guitar playing. Just saying. I mean, unless you're at the level where you're going to be with Bon Jovi for the next 10 years, which, by the way, he did kick out the guy that had been in his band for 20 years for something ridiculous.
Richie Sambora.
Yeah, because Richie wanted more money, probably. But that's my point with this whole situation. It's like, okay,
he forgot that Richie was the reason that he got through the 80s because John was so drunk and stoned out of his mind he couldn't hit his own notes. Right. So Richie was back there singing for him. But that's beside the point. Yeah. Folks. I love Richie Sambora.
So I just look at Phil X and I go, this is kind of silliness, like in this day and age to assume that you're going to be playing on these stages where you're going to have that level of volume available to you. Like, to your point, Randy Rhoads reacting that way. That was the norm back in 1970. Like everybody was playing with these huge stacks and through the 70s and 80s. But it hasn't been that way since maybe late 90s. That
90s.
Yeah, I mean, you go into a bar now, and if you bring in a 4x12, the club owner's like, "What are you doing with that?" It's a weird situation. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you got to look for other ways.
You'd never get away with it.
That's what high gain is for, right? Is to give you that feedback and sustain at a reasonable volume level. Okay. So that's where I'm kind of like, all right, yeah, I get it, Phil. You're an elitist and you can do these things, and it's wonderful that you get to do them. But my problem is, just like John Mayer, who we're going to talk about in a second, is that your elite status puts you in a position where people are actually looking at you for your opinion, yet they cannot achieve your opinion. Okay.
Right.
And it's
and they may never achieve your opinion.
All right. So now we're gonna switch gears. John Mayer does this dumbass article with Guitar World. And if you've read the interview, which I have, I would recommend you not, because it is clickbait. But if you want to, indulge yourself, you can go read it. And in this interview, basically the gist of it is like, well, you're using a Fractal Audio Axe 3, and you feel it has some shortcomings. And he basically says, well, yeah, it doesn't he doesn't say the Fractal. He says modelers don't respond to the way you roll back your volume knob the same way an amp does. And to a point, he's right. But this is the first part where I took massive issue with what he had to say, because I'm like, well, but the Kemper does, okay? And most people would consider that a modeling device. Now, maybe he's informed enough that he considers the Kemper a profiling device, so it's a separate thing. I don't know. But even then, I had a Helix, and when I rolled that volume knob back, it cleaned up pretty good, just like kind of like a real amp. I mean, it wasn't, I would say it was 95% of the way there. It wasn't as good as the way the Kemper does it. But yeah, it was probably less. It's probably 90% of the way there. The Kemper definitely does a much better job, at least in that regard. But I'm like, that's your deal breaker? That it doesn't clean up the same way when you roll your volume knob back. Well, it's like, I get it. Like, everybody uses the volume knob to control their amplifier, especially Stratocaster players, which John is a Stratocaster player first and foremost. But I guess I posted the article, and I basically just wanted to say it was clickbait, and that, like, I didn't feel that this was a realistic assessment, and I didn't feel that modelers got their just desserts in this conversation, because it's not real world conditions, right? Like, let's stop and let's examine John Mayer's career a bit here. Where does he play, Jim? Where does John Mayer play? What in front of what size audiences?
Right. So here's a guy that's playing to 50,000 people, right? 20,000 people. A small gig with him would probably be to 5,000, 10,000 people.
Madison Square Garden. Okay. That's the kind of places where he plays.
Right. And so that's exactly what I wrote in there. I mean, the guy doesn't even rehearse. I'm sure he practices at home.
Yeah, and he's on Instagram all the time doing it.
The guys from That Pedal Show, I'm sure he's got the most expensive, practice amp
to
buy, because, not all of us can sit at home and practice with a dumble.
Or many dumbles.
And here's the kind of guy, he can literally, this is what bothers me about when the masses give credence to what people like this say, because it's not that I don't like John Mayer. It's not that I don't think he's talented. I'm not going to say he's not. What I am going to say is he doesn't understand what you have to go through, because he can literally pick up his cell phone and go, oh, sycophant or person I pay,
whatever you want to call them today,
bring me this amp now.
And then it'll show up in 10 minutes. You don't know where it came from, but it just showed up. It just magical poof.
By the time he gets his shoes,
I swear the ninja throw the little egg on the ground that causes all the puff of smoke, and then there's like a dumble there,
Right. It's like a Batman trick.
Yeah.
But he goes into his other room where someone changes his shoes for him. I don't know if that's
I don't think he has shoe changers.
But
Taylor Swift is hanging out.
Where Taylor Swift is sitting, and she's there to give him a back massage.
Yeah, because she's hanging out with Jennifer Aniston.
Actually, she pays somebody else to give him a back massage while she says, "Yes, honey, I know. I love you very much." And then he goes in there, just saying, and then somebody else cooks them their dinner and cooks them their lunch and cooks them their breakfast, and then they sit down and he's got a dumbbell sitting there where he was just 10 minutes ago that weighs 100,
in a road case, right? In a road case with a dumbbell later,
and he can turn it all the way up. Nobody's going to go, John, turn it down. No, because he lives on an estate.
He lives in an estate.
He can turn it so far up that when people do bitch, he's just like, I don't need.
Yeah, he just pays
down.
the cop.
I'm John Mayer.
The cops show up and they're like, we have to issue a noise complaint, and then he just pays them and they go away.
No, he just goes, here, let me sign your daughter's.
He doesn't even pay him, right? Like, here, I'll sign that ticket. It's worth $10,000. Have a good day.
Yeah, here. Oh, John, can I have your autograph? Oh, by the way, could you please turn it down? I had cops do that to me, and I'm not even famous. So, I mean, they didn't have me for my autograph, but they did just say, Mr. Woodard, could you please turn it down? So it's not like he lives in our world, so he doesn't get that. Yes, we know that a Mark V, your Mark V has certain things that the Kemper, no matter how well you model it, is never going to get.
Yeah, I mean, there's a feeling you get from it because it's an amp in the room thing, and that's what I want to speak about, though. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But we have to make certain concessions.
It's not even concessions.
Nobody tells us.
Concessions makes an assumption that there is a good way and a bad way, and that is my problem with this whole thing.
No, I'm talking about the concession that I've got to fit a 5x5 spot. That's me personally on a stage.
I'm just, but nobody's going to tell me that's wrong. That I have to sit in a 5x5 room and play my guitar. That's my point. He's making the assumption that because you don't get what he's saying about. No, it's not him. It's really guitar world, because they know that people are going to click on this and read this, right? They're making the assumption that somebody who has like a 50-watt Marshall, in their house, and like they have to keep it on one, like that they don't really know what they're doing because they don't get to turn it up and be in these bigger venues, or if you have the modeler and you're sitting at home and you're playing it at a quiet volume, that somehow we're doing it wrong because we don't know why somebody like John Mayer would do this. Here's my thing. This is the elitist part of this whole conversation, is that, look, yes, I'm Mike Mara brought it up in the group, and he's absolutely right. John has more experience with gear than anybody on this podcast does. However, John is not going to tell me what works for me, and that is the point. We look at these celebrities like Phil X and John Mayer and anybody else that you'll find on YouTube or in the guitar community at large that you look up to, and you will take what they're telling you in stone as that's the only way you can achieve what they're saying to do. You will take, and people do it all the time. I watch it all the time. They'll look at somebody like Stevie Ray Vaughan and they get all these like rig rundown photos from the 80s and whatever, and they're like, oh, this is what he was using here, and this is what and then they build a rig around it, or they try to emulate it in some way, and it's like, listen, just find what works for you, for Christ's sakes. Like, figure out what your sound is and build it around that. Stop trying to be everybody else.
Thank you.
Yeah. I haven't done that in a while.
That is what I was getting at. But it's like, the reality is, would I love to be the way it was in the late 70s, early 80s when I was coming up?
Late 70s, early 80s. What do you play, Jim? A Fender or a Marshall?
Yeah, it was the Fender.
and there weren't any boxes around, so that was a rarity.
Not for me to get. No, I couldn't find a box. So you had a Marshall. I had a Stack. I don't know if you've ever seen these, but I had a 6x12 versus a 4x and a 4x. I had a 4x and a 2x. Yeah, it was a broke down thing. It was a little smaller, so I could fit the head in about my height, because there were bars where in the
you couldn't even get in the door.
Yeah, and I had, you pay a guy $25 that hopefully would steal your stuff to move your things in and out because you were just dead tired. Anyway, so I did this stuff, and would I love to have that right now? Sure,
to an extent.
But that doesn't mean to say that I don't like this. I love this Marshall DSL. There's a reason I've had 3 of them.
I think some of the old
This is my 3rd one.
Some of this old coveted gear, I'm going to go on a limb here and I'm going to say so many people idolize it because they've never actually had their hands on it to begin with. Knowing that we have show listeners like Nick Bongers who actually has a lot of vintage stuff or like original equipment, he can attest to that. Like, not every old piece of gear is good. Much of it is complete crap. And so I watched a guy last night. He's in an Ozzy tribute act, right? Like, because it was a tribute, it was more of a cover band, but he had a DS. Yeah, it was either a DSL or TSL, but it was a combo, right? It was I think it was a 1x12, and it sounded freaking great. Even my wife turned to me and she goes, "Wow, his guitar tone is really good." I'm like, I hope it was as good as mine. Like, that was kind of what I meant was I hope mine was as good as this.
Babe, his tone is as good as
I was hoping mine was better, but
a jealousy thing.
Because you kind of sit there and you go, crap, I wish I sounded that good, I'm sure you've had that moment too where you're sitting in the audience, you're like, damn it.
But I've been there. I've been that guy that had a really nice guitar, really nice thing, and then stood next to a guy that had a little Blues Junior with a friggin' Digitech pedal who sounded awesome. And I'm like, all right, I hate you. I hate your guts.
That's my point, man. Like, we all idolize. Like, I'm guilty of it too. I look at people like Yngwie Malmsteen and Richie Blackmore and all these guys, and I'm like, man, I want to do what they did. I want to have these really big, loud Marshalls and stuff. But then I stop and I think to myself, like, I actually can't do that. So I have to find the closest approximation that makes me happy and that actually accomplishes the goals I set out to do. And you know what? I've been really successful at it, and I can't complain. But I always stop and say to myself, like, if I get too much into one person's style, like, how do I get out of this? Like, what do I do to go? I gotta back out of that style and go over here and do something else.
And I gotta come into
so like right now I'm playing so much metal and I'm like, I know I'm gonna have to back off and start playing more blues. Like, I know that I have to switch gears because if I don't, I'm gonna get too slanted in one way. So it's the same thing when it comes to gear and tone. If you get too slanted in one way, you're gonna sound like that person. That's what happened to John Mayer. I know everybody thinks that like Mayer's like this unique individual or whatever. He's Stevie Ray Vaughan, right? He's Stevie Ray Vaughan with like modern pickups. I mean, there's really not that much going on there. And his vocals, it's the same thing. He's won Grammys for having less than like an octave and a half worth of range. It's ridiculous.
All right. So, yeah, I want to talk directly to that. So, I'm a fan of Lenny Kravitz. But let's face it, Lenny Kravitz, every single riff and lick is stolen directly. It's right out of a Jimi Hendrix playbook. It is. If you get a Kravitz album and you listen to it, because I do,
shuffle it up with the Experience records, and then tell me which is which.
It's Experience Hendrix. That's exactly what it is. And every one of them, every album, every song. If you listen to Go Your Way,
and that's not to say you can't like that music. Like, I like Lenny Kravitz's stuff. But you're absolutely right, Jim. He's the same thing.
Right. And there's another guy that when I first saw him, he had, he had a Gibson Flying V, and he was playing through he literally was Hendrix. He had a Gibson Flying V with a Marshall stack. He was playing the whole thing. I was like, oh, and then he did American Woman as if he was Hendrix. I mean, it was like Hendrix was covering BTO, right? Or not BTO, it was BTO before they were BTO, which was Guess Who, right? He was doing exactly what Hendrix would have done with the song. And I loved it, and kind of like, so what are you going to do? I mean, you could chase the dragon forever. Or you can say, okay, I need to work on my chops. I need to work on my sound. And the only reason that I mentioned that I wanted to turn my amp up is because I was doing Stairway to Heaven. I know, no Stairway, right? I was doing Stairway to Heaven. I was doing that solo, that outro solo. And I had been playing, playing along. And then I get to the outro solo. And I'm like, because I never learned it note for note. So I sat down yesterday, and I literally learned it yesterday from end to end in an hour, note for note. And
you have more patience
when I
than
got to that, it died. It just died. And so I said, well, I don't have a compressor on a board. Boop, I just cranked it and I did that, and it just freaking sounded awesome. And of course, I was just using the natural compression of the amp. But my point is, folks, you can do that. You could do that. If I had a 5-watt amp, if I cranked it, it would have done it. Or if I had a 10-watt amp, I cranked it, it would have done it. It doesn't matter. It's just you've got to learn how to use the equipment that you have in place, right? And you want to get that while I sit here and look at a Rickenbacker 36012. But but you can't get a 12-string sound out of a 6-string. I don't care how hard you try. I don't care what kind of emulator pedals you buy. But do you really need a 12-string? That's the question that comes into mind. But on the other side of that,
I'm just sitting here thinking about my Mark V right now. Like, I'm spacing out, and I'm like, man, I should take that to open mic on Tuesday.
I took this, the black Angus Young, to I did because last week now it's last week, folks.
Yeah,
we're recording even in the following week. When I did the open mic, I did some Tom Petty tunes because last week, I think it was the 6th, was the anniversary of losing Tom Petty, so I did some Tom Petty tunes. Now I got to learn a bunch of Cream stuff for this coming week. So I might do White Room or
Yeah, nice tribute there, by the way.
And what's his name? Rick Beato did a little tribute, and the thing that he did was he was talking about how over the next year or two we're just going to see it keep happening.
Yeah,
I mean, if you think about it,
next
Clapton
5
is
years,
74 years old. Yeah, I mean, Clapton is 74.
Who cares about him?
Right? He was talking about the youngest guy, the youngest guy, in the great plane of things is Frampton at 69. So if you look, now Frampton took better care of himself when he was
except for the cocaine.
But I'm just talking about the guys like Clapton. He was on the horse for a long time.
I would not be surprised. I could see several people kicking the bucket that are younger than them that would probably shock the hell out of people. One of them being Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. Oh, Eddie Van Halen can't stop. He's had cancer more than a few times.
He's had cancer once, and the rumor is he has cancer right now. That's been a rumor for 6 months now. So
yeah, he had mouth or throat.
Yeah, well, he had mouth cancer and he blames it on his picks. The guy smokes like a chimney, but he blamed his mouth cancer on his picks.
Probably guitar picks. Yeah. It was a guitar picks. It wasn't the fact that his guitars all had cigarette burns in the necks,
that
or in the headstock. Couldn't stop smoking.
That he smokes more cigarettes than he plays guitar. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen him without a cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah,
just saying.
Yeah, he'd be like Sharon Stone in that movie. What are you going to do? Tell me I can't smoke?
Oh my God! I'm not going any further.
Then he crosses his legs. But why did he wear those shorts? That's what we want to know. So anyway, Eddie, stop that! You know what happens to old men?
Oh God!
So when went down the hill there real fast there.
We are in the gutter tonight.
Yep, we're down here. Why not? And we don't.
Hey, I was talking about John Mayer. What better place to go? The gutter.
You gotta get clicked somehow. But yeah, we don't have. I don't think any of us. I'm sure none of our listeners. And if one of our listeners does have cartage, thank you for listening. That's all I can say.
You're obviously in the wrong place. Yeah.
Go find a better class.
There's
of
definitely
losers.
Some better podcasts for you. I can recommend a few.
But my point is that I'm looking at all this and I'm like, why do we care what these people think? Why should you? I mean, unless you're playing for them, they don't care what you think. They come to you and ask, "Hey, what do you think?"
Music is so much of a participatory art in the sense that most of us get into music because we like some artists, and then we're like, I wish I could do that, and then we pick up a guitar, and the first thing is most people do is learn those artists' songs, right? And
let's take it out of music for just a second. Did Picasso copy anybody?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure. I mean,
I'm sure in the beginning he did. Everybody
that's my
learned
point.
somehow. But then he moved
because
on.
he was a professional. But Picasso would be the guy that you would talk about, like in the same vein as like your John Mayer, your Eric Clapton, your Jimi Hendrix, like the people that actually like inspired people after them. Whereas somebody like me going into a club and playing, nobody's going to be inspired by me. Like, and if they are,
No.
that would be like this cosmic thing where I would feel the need to like cry.
But nobody gets inspired. Nobody's getting inspired by the person that's a street artist that's sitting there.
That's my point. That's my point.
Long.
And usually they are classical in the sense that like they've looked at what other people do and that's how they develop their technique. You will find some unique and unorthodox individuals that don't get stardom and fame. But my point is that the vast majority of guitar players probably pick up a guitar because they liked a Korn song or I'm just throwing like Korn. I'm just random bands that of the last 20 years.
I could have told them how to get that sound. All you got to do is get a wah pedal and a Strat.
Oh my gosh,
a small Fender amp,
some minor six chords. Anyway, so no, I'm just thinking like there's some random band, like I'm sure some people picked up a guitar because of Soundgarden, or some people picked up a guitar because of Pearl Jam. Yeah. Somebody picked up a guitar, and it doesn't matter who the band is, but the point is that like they pick up a guitar and then they learn those songs initially, and then some people because of that like frequency and gravitation, they can't get out of that loop, and so that's what happens is like every time Stone Goddard, I think he's the guitar player for Pearl Jam, right? Gets it.
I think
it gets in an
Kim something.
No, Kim Thiel is that Soundgarden. Right. Soundgarden. So like let's say Kim Thiel, every time he does an interview, then they're like, oh, I gotta find out what he's using. I gotta go get, X. And there are definitely people that get into that loop.
Yeah, for the longest time I saw that Jim Root, right?
That's, the guy from Slipknot. Yep.
Slipknot. Every time Jim Root would say something, people would clamor to get the Jim Root thing. And then who's the other guy? There's Jim Root.
Mick Thompson.
What was it? Thompson. Mick Thompson. So then the other guys had to get the Mick Thompson.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's fine. Like, I think that's fine to an extent that you understand that you're after something specific about what they do. It shouldn't be hero worship. You shouldn't be doing it because you like the person or you want to be that person. Like, that's where it crosses over into the realm of the weird. And this is why you have things like that meme of the famous movie with Hitler where he's like talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan's tone where they've overdubbed that. I'm sure everybody's seen that at this point, the video clip. Yeah,
I've seen that meme so many times. And so many.
The guy says his tone is in the fingers or whatever, and he just like flips out and starts going off. But no, the whole thing is like, I've seen people with two tube screamers on their board and a wah pedal taped together. This has happened, okay? And it's at some point you got to go like, what are you trying to achieve here? Are you just trying to be this other person, or are you trying to be yourself?
Why do you think that there's a David Gilmour Stratocaster and Guitar
My point.
For
that's why the artist sales are so big, because people are like, I want to do exactly what that guy's doing.
And you're not. I have this SG, and there's nothing about it when I play it that sounds like Angus Young. And I'm plugging it straight into a Marshall. I mean, it's just, there's no, how do I say this? There's no way that the individual, we've said this before, no way an individual will sound exactly like another individual. And you'll never pull it off. I've never heard anybody play Stevie Ray Vaughan that made me feel. I was just talking to my co-guitar player in the band tonight, and we were talking about that. And we were talking about how, because you know how you and I had talked on a podcast a couple weeks ago about how most of the blues bands don't sound bluesy. No, they kind of sound really stiff and crappy. We were talking about one of the local blues guys and he said to me, my co-guitar player finally said something to me I've only ever heard from people like us. He goes, Jim, you know why they play the blues? Because it's easy. He says they just pick 1, 4, 5 straight up blues.
And everybody knows how to go through those changes.
They're lazy and they don't want to learn anything new. He says He says if they wanted to learn one new thing, they'd come outside that
They play a
genre
2-5-1
and play something different. Yeah, well, 2-5-1, 2-6.
No. The
what is
reason
it?
why I say
6,
2-5-1 is it? Am I saying that wrong?
jazz.
Is it 2-5? No,
Jazz.
it's 2-5-1. Yeah,
2-5-1
yeah.
jazz.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like, well, then they could do it in all keys, and then they could do it. You know, you can see where this is going. Like, then it becomes hard, and they don't want to do that.
I mean, and so there was Ed Koch did an interview where he was talking about how different guitars make
You
you
mean
play
Greg?
differently. Greg Koch.
Ed.
Who did I say?
I
Who the
don't
hell's
know.
Ed Koch? Oh, I know who Ed Koch is. He used to be the New Yorkers know because he used to be the mayor of New York
Wow,
City.
Jim! Wow. Now you're
Talking about, like
reaching.
the 70s. Anyway, Greg Koch was talking about that. Yet, if you ask him what one guitar would you take to and from, it's his Telecaster. And now, of course, he'll say his Reverend because that's his signature. But it was made to his spec, so it's a Telecaster with Reverend headstock. But the point is, Greg Koch, who is probably the one guy who can say he can do just about anything on guitar. I've heard him do jazz, heard him do classical, heard him do. I mean, the guy's an incredible genius on guitar, and yet he'll be also the next guy to say, no matter how much you think I sound like Ed King, I don't sound like Ed King. And so that's for those who don't know who Ed King was. He was from the Leonard Skinner band. But the point is, if you're looking to chase tone, but don't buy their gear to get there. You will find gear that works for you because your playing style would be different. The way you pick is going to be different. The way you bend is going to be different.
Myself?
The way you Yep, go for it.
I think our listeners may remember. I've been in a kind of an avowed Marshall guy at least the entire time I've been doing this show, and that's not been the entire truth of my playing career. But like I had this idea that I was going to do this Hendrix thing, and I was going to get a Plexi or a Plexi-like amp, and I started going down this path of looking at all these Plexi-esque amps. You know what I found, Jim? And this is going to sound absolutely insane, but I don't want a Plexi.
You don't.
No, you know what I want?
Yeah,
you know what I want?
say,
I want a JCM 800, which was the thing I said all along I didn't want. Because that's a Marshall to me. Like, that's the sound that I picture coming out of a Marshall, not the kind of fuzzy thing that happens with a Plexi. Not that Plexis are bad. It's just not what I'm after. And it's not I could use an 800 and I can do the Jimi Hendrix thing. And it would be fine because it gives me the frequency curve I need. But the main thing is because I was so like blind to the fact that this is the guy that really inspires me to play, and I was going to do what he thought was the original template for guitar. And somebody like that, like I idolize him to the point where it's like, this is the giant to which all people should be looking. And that's wrong because let's face it, Jimmy had a lot of contemporaries who were also extremely talented and also the same kind of figures, these same kind of messianic figures in guitar. I mean, let's not forget the other people that shared the stage with him at Woodstock, like, Carlos Santana, for example, who arguably has a fairly different tone and style. At the Who, Pete Townsend is a perfect example.
Slightly different.
I think Meyer Butterfly was there. But yeah, so it's just my point is that
Country Joe,
even at the time, like Hendrix was popular, there were all these blues cats that were just unbelievable, like Albert King, or and that's my point. Is like you can get so focused on one specific player, like Jeff Beck, for example, and I love Jeff Beck, but I mean, you could get so focused on somebody that you lose sight of the fact that there's all this other guitar work out there to look at. Don't forget to look at other players.
Yeah. Well, for me, again, we've talked about how I was lucky enough to grow up at a time when it was exploding. So for me, my childhood was filled with everything from the Beatles to the Byrds to the Stones to everything that we've already mentioned, the Who and Hendrix. And of course, I was in my 20s when, I in my 30s when when Stevie Ray Vaughan passed away. So I'd seen Stevie Ray Vaughan. I was alive when they put the news out that we had lost Hendrix. I remember the announcement of somebody saying the Beatles broke up, and my father being upset enough to throw things. I mean, there's a there was an explosion of guitar, and the one thing I learned when I saw all these guitar players playing, nobody was doing the same thing.
Can we talk? There's one other article
you could say there were people that were saying, "Oh, the British invasion means you have to have a Rickenbacker and what was the amp, Hiwatt or whatever." But the truth of the matter is, the British invasion wasn't that. There were a lot of Tellys, there were a lot of Strats, there were a lot of SGs, there were a lot of Les Pauls. And so, as I was watching all these players, all these things that they do, I saw the one thing they had. I mean, I remember Pat Travers first started, So, when he started putting out records, and I'm thinking to myself, wow. And yeah, I'm the same kid. I was sitting down listening to Styx, and I could listen to Pat Travers, and I could listen to Muddy Waters, and I could listen to.
I know
Clapton.
so many people who get genre pigeonholed or like artist pigeonholed, and that's the danger.
Yeah.
It's not really genre pigeonholed. Like if you're going to be an electric guitar player and you decide you're going to play metal, and all you listen to is metal music, that might work out for you. But it's all I'm going to listen to is I'm just trying to Hate Eternal. Like that's the only band I'm going to listen to.
Hatebreed.
Yeah, Hate Eternal. We'll stick with that one.
Okay, I've only seen. I thought that their logo was cool.
All of their logos are cool. Their logos are oftentimes cooler than the music of the band itself. Sometimes you can't even read the band name in the logo, and there have been various memes where people have put together like these insane looking logos that have no band name in them. That is brilliant to me. That would be the kind of name that I would have for a hard metal band. But anyway, when I look at the extreme metal stuff and I think about it, yeah, you'll learn to play guitar by listening to one band, but you'll only be able to play that band's stuff, and you're not gonna develop that style any further beyond what you just what you are attempting to emulate. And so that's where I'm like, part of guitar is synthesis, and not a synthesizer, but the idea that you're going to take two things and mash them up, and you're going to take all the good parts, and that is synthesis. You can look at it and you can say it's what do they call it, where you just you're mixing things up. It's not the same, because mixing things up also mixes up the bad things, and I don't think anybody wants to mix up the things that are negative about something. Although I think those things are often the things that give a particular style or musician their charm, is the way that they screw things up. That's just a bare component there. But we're talking about Pete Townsend, and since we're talking about news articles tonight, dude, we got to talk about Pete Townsend's comment. Yeah, because I know you know what I'm talking about, where he says guitar is dead. Like there's nothing new and interesting going on in guitar. He is so fucking out of touch with reality. It's unbelievable. He is.
Yeah, that guy's been out of touch with reality.
Dude, seriously. Tosin Abasi, Guthrie Govan, even Steve Vai still, those people would beg to differ with you. There's definitely some exciting guitar music out there. It might not be the stuff that you hear at number one on record charts or whatever, but ultimately, if you're a guitar player, there's still music out there for you. And that's another thing. Well, I'm going to these open mics and I'm playing guitar instrumental music primarily, right? I do a vocal number here or there, but the whole thing is, you'd think you go into these situations and nobody would be interested in what you're doing, but it's all other musicians in the room. That's the perfect place for somebody like me to play.
Yeah, like that. Exactly. So I want to talk to that. So just like we talked about Mayer and what's his face, Phil X. I want to talk directly to that. So Pete Townsend. So I was talking about how I grew up, and there were so many new and exciting things. It was really an exciting time for music. But the thing about Pete Townsend is he got to say, hey, Marshall, here's what I want an amp to sound like. And Marshall created. Hey, Hiwatt, I want an amp to sound like this. And they created it. Now, I'm not talking about the guys who do signature amps today, because the guys who are doing signature amps today are still basing
they're
them
like
on
digging
what
out the
was
old
out there.
designs and be like, all right, we'll tweak this resistor here and this cap here. And
yeah, and then put my name on it and charge people $500 extra dollars a piece. No, I'm talking about the ones that were making it. Like Marshall was like, I don't know if I can make an amp like that. And so at the time, Marshall was still making, I don't know if they still make them, but they were making bass heads too. So you had Entwistle over here saying, I want a bass head that's this loud because Townsend's that loud. And then Townsend was like, well, I want this. And I mean, they were going, that's the reason the whole Hiwatt thing and everything else. So if you look at, they were in a volume war. I mean, they were doing things like that. And then you had guys like Hendrix, and you had people. So the guitar was still in a morphing stage. I mean, the 50s started it, right? The 50s, we had guys like Scotty Moore and stuff that were taking guitar and putting it into electrified, right? And they were moving that way. Where a guitar was the main melodic instrument. If you think about it, folks, it's not that long ago when a piano was the melodic instrument, because it was the only one that you were really able to hear, right? And there were banjos. The reason banjos were melodic is because they were loud, and there were fiddles, because fiddles had a frequency range that carried, right? So if you were doing a band, it was a good chance that the band you were in the 40s had a guitar, but it was just somebody strumming chords. It was a harmony instrument, not a melodic instrument. Okay, there's a difference, right? So then, so folks, when we refer to a harmony instrument, we're talking about chords for the most part. Okay, so now you move into the 50s. The 50s brings the electric guitar forward, right? And then the 60s makes it explode. But before the Who, and before Hendrix, and before the Beatles, right? That's why people, they latch on to the Beatles, or they latch on to Hendrix, or they latch on to Clapton, they latch on to those folks, because that was the needle coming in this direction. It was the beginning, really, of it all. Because before that, it was still a clean tone. You look back at Scotty Moore playing for Elvis Presley.
Unless you were listening to like the blues stuff. Like Albert King would have been popular before then and stuff.
And the Albert King stuff and the Muddy Water stuff and things like that, you know.
You mean the pre-Hendrix?
People forget. Yes, the Hendrixes. They were doing something that it was an accident. Okay, they were pushing their amps really hard.
I think I think maybe the generation prior to them it was an accident. I think those guys were after it.
They were pushing it hard, and the reason they were pushing it hard is because they didn't have the money.
Yeah.
When you think about it, a guitar like Lucille, there's a reason that freaking B.B. King ran into a burning building, to grab his guitar.
Yeah.
It was because in today's world, you think that a 335 costs a lot, or whatever it was. Was it 335, 339? Anyway, if you think it costs a lot now, the amount of money you had to pay back then was equal to what it is now, or more. And so that's the reason he ran into a burning building to grab his guitar. That was his livelihood. That was everything. And so if you look at it, there were guys pushing the limits, and they were doing new things and exciting things with the gear that they had. And I think that's probably what Townsend is saying. I'm not 100. I also know that Townsend's he's been out of touch with reality since Quadrophenia. So let's not go there. But the point is that there's music. There's this beautiful music that's still being created. You can still do it, you know. And people are like, "Well, I can't do it this way," because if they're looking for something new, because so and so already used the distorted sound, so and so already used this, so and so already did that. But if you're looking for your own voice, it's no further than right inside your head. And and in your heart and in your ears.
Yeah,
That's
I
where
mean,
your voice is.
I know at least when I first started playing, like I had a general archetype for like what I thought guitar was supposed to sound like. And I've spent years still chasing that original idea, and rationalizing that other people had already done that original idea when they in fact had not.
Yep.
So there are certainly players that I found that have come close to where I'm at, but I really feel like I will achieve it someday because it's so clear in my mind. And I think that's, to some extent, I think we all have that inside us. Like we have this archetypal idea of what we expect the guitar to sound like. And so that's what we should be pursuing. Not so much like trying to sound like some other person. Now technique wise, that may be another conversation, but like just like playing an open E chord, what that should sound like to me. And I can't really describe it, but I know what it sounds like because I can hear it in my head. And that's what I've chased all these years. Um, and then I have another idea of what like a lead sound should be, and that's a whole other thing, which means that ideally I'd want them both in the same amp on the same channel so I can just literally just do it. But I don't think that's achievable because they're pretty different. But ultimately, that's kind of what I'm getting at here is that like look within yourself, reach deep down in there, pull from the bottom, and hopefully your butthole won't come out your mouth, and you'll achieve something. Like it'll sound like you at the least. And
Yeah.
part of the synthesis idea where I was talking about that a minute ago, I want everybody to understand that synthesis does not mean that you're going to literally be an amalgamation of these two people. What happens is those two things get mashed up, and then that's you in the middle. You're the thing that fills in, or it's like wood putty. There's two pieces of wood, and you slather wood putty between them. You stick them together. You're the wood putty. You're the thing that's actually pulling these things
Right.
together. And so you do squeeze
Yep.
through the cracks, and you do come through, and that's how you actually develop a voice. And so developing a voice on
Absolutely.
guitar is a skill that we should be looking at, like the other skills we've talked about on the show, like ear training and perseverance, and how to assemble the right rig for what you're doing, and all of those different skill sets that go into being a musician. Which that's, I mean, people think that literally being a musician is just playing the guitar, and there's so much more to it than that. There's behavior towards other people, which Jim, you and I both have dealt with people over the years who are less than civil to one another. There's
Right.
these social aspects of knowing when it's appropriate to consume alcohol or drop acid before a show. And I'm sure you've dealt with people like that too, where it's like substance abuse knows no end before they go on stage. Or people who don't maintain their gear properly, or people who get upset at the drop of a hat with the club owner because they told them to turn down. Like all these different things are
Oh
just
my
like little
God.
pieces of being a musician that we have to amalgamate and figure out a path that's a positive one for us. And I think that's the toughest
Yeah.
challenge. Like you can figure out how to play an instrument in a number of years. And yes, that takes time, but ultimately you will figure it out if you put the hours in. It's the other stuff
Right.
that goes along with it, like ear training and then the social skills. And we should probably put together a list of these things so that you understand, like, playing your instrument's only a small fraction of what it takes to actually be a musician. And that, I think if everybody
Yeah.
understood that, I think this world would be a lot friendlier for musicians. Because
Yeah. Pete Thorne had an excellent So You Want to Be a Pro Musician series of videos that he did where he talked about that. He said it's a given that you're going to be talented. You wouldn't be trying to do this if you weren't talented. Now, there are always, and this is the thing, folks, because you know how I said that you're always good enough to take the stage? And
yeah,
you are.
I agree.
But, and I say but, and everybody says, well, everything that comes before but doesn't matter, right?
Well, my but anyway.
Yeah. Mine is so huge that but anyway, so what I was trying to say is that there's this, if you're going to take the stage, you're going to play, it's a given that you've worked on the songs. You've giving your best, you're giving your all. So that's not the question of whether or not you'd make a good musician. As far as, like making a living at it, or at least making some money at it. And that is, are you able to work with others? Like you said, the social aspects. I've had the problem with a lot of the people that like you were talking about, the person that drops acid before a gig. I'll tell you, the problem with a lot of these guys is a lot of times in the beginning, that little bit of a joint takes the edge off.
Yeah. They're
That one
relying
beer
on it. And
takes the
because
edge.
they're relying on it, that's why they never are able to do it without it.
Right. Well, then because it takes the edge off a little bit, they sound good.
To them.
Like
To them.
what's happened? Yeah. Well, if they've only taken the edge off, if you had one beer.
I have seen one hit wonders.
Typically, but I'll say this, that once those people get convinced that they can't go on stage unless they're stoned or they're drunk. And then that's when it gets dangerous. When it's no longer just taking the edge off, it becomes a thing of its own. It takes on a life of its own. And I think that's true probably of just about anything somebody does that they think they need to rely on drugs or alcohol to go forward. Like I'll always hear people, well, I think so much better, so much clearer when I'm stoned. Well, then you need to learn how to think clearer, because you shouldn't have to be stoned to think clearly.
Yeah.
You're thinking in a way that's in an unreal state. So it's just like a dream. In my dreams, I can fly. In my dreams, I can do things I've never done in my life, right? Yeah, it's just, I know. No, that guy is bad.
He thinks about it.
It's socially unacceptable to like that song. But no, I mean, I've had dreams where and when I first woke up, I was like, I was convinced. I figured it out. I know how to walk on air. So, yeah, there's that opening of the world when people are stoned, but when they come back down to the earth, that's not a reality. And the problem is when we talk about art, often art is a place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really think Cannibal Corpse is out there doing some of the things that are in their song titles?
Right. So if you go out there and you talk about the fact that a lot of these people, if they're not creative, they're not worth anything. So there are people then that go, hey, this person's making us money, and to be creative, they have to be stoned. Let's keep them stoned. To be productive, they have to be drunk. So let's keep them drunk. And so the sycophants, we talked about that before. The sycophants circle in. And even if you're just a bar band guy and somebody says to you, man, you should probably just have a little bit of a joint, just take the edge off. Then maybe you need to find another way to take the edge off. I'm just saying. Yeah, you got to take the edge off sometimes. I'll tell you, sometimes it's take that stage and it's like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm doing this. It's another night. And it does become work, and you're thinking, oh, these people, they suck. I don't want to sit here and play 42 songs to a bunch of people that are worried more about who's going to win the football game or baseball game.
You don't have to play 42 songs. All you have to do is know 12-bar blues.
That's it. That's why you become a blues band.
Honestly,
1, 4, 5.
Honestly, I think that has a lot to do with it, because I have seen bands where it's literally all of their songs are in A, B, or E, and it's the whole night is just them switching keys and doing 12-bar blues stuff, because they just don't have a long enough set.
Yeah, I was in a blues band for about a month. That's how I could stand it. I was playing bass for a blues band, and the guys were, luckily, because I am not bluesy, they were the whitest blues band on the planet, right? They were just not good. I said, hey man, we've only got 22 songs. You sure we don't need any more songs? And he goes, don't worry about it. Nobody's there from the second set to the third set. We just do the same songs over and over. And so that's what we did. Sometimes we would do Black Magic Woman 3 times in a night. Evil Ways.
Well,
3
yeah, and
times
that's
in
the
a
thing.
night.
Like, I don't think people realize that you can get away with that if you're playing until 2:00 in the morning. Like, you can play the same set twice. You can have 2 sets and then do it 4 times. And the people that were there for the first set will not be there for the second one. The second time you play through, it just I've been there. I've had to do that. I think I had to do that. That's it. That sounds accurate. But I know I've played the same song twice in a set before. I don't know whether it was on accident, but I know I've done that.
In the same set, I don't think I've done it, but in 2 sets, I've definitely done it. I've had a band where we weren't really ready. Somebody asked us to play a gig, so we played the same set 3 times.
Yeah.
And you know what? Truthfully, nobody cared.
By the time they get to the second time, they're either too drunk to care.
A lot of times they were like, "Oh man, I really like this
they're
song."
like, "I'm glad you're playing it again." You're like, "I've just played like 3 songs in a row again." Okay.
But they hear their favorite song, whether it's "Last Dance with Mary Jane" or "God Help Us." What's the one? Mustang Sally.
Yeah.
The White Man's 12-bar blues. Mustang Sally. That song is horrible.
You know what? I want to see.
They didn't bother to write lyrics that mattered.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I just wish that people would be more cognizant of the fact that you can have a voice and you can still play covers too, because that's another thing. I saw this band last night. They were doing the Aussie thing, and like the guy nailed Randy Rhoads. He's really good at like doing all the little Randy Rhoads-isms. And then they played an original song they wrote, and he was doing the Randy Rhoads-isms, and it worked pretty well. But I still feel like he still needs to explore like playing more of his own style of music too. Because I think, look, I get like the Randy Hansen thing, he's the Hendrix impersonator who's done 2 albums, which are very Hendrix inspired, which is kind of like, this is what Hendrix would be doing if he were alive today kind of thing. And I get it, but I just don't think that's like, I just think it's kind of a bad taste.
Yeah. So you just mentioned the thing about so the other guitar player and I, we were talking because we were talking about our strengths and weaknesses in the band. And he goes, your strength is when you play a solo the way that they play the solo. And what's funny is he goes, you do it rote, you do it note for note every time. I said, man, you have no idea. I said to him, I said, I know how it sounds. Here's how I do it. I know the first part and I know the ending, and then I fill in the middle. It's just like, I know the first few lyrics of a song, and I know the last lyrics of the song, and in the middle, I'm just going, and then I'm done with it.
I want to point out in that video,
it's just like Stairway to Heaven. There's a lady who shows all that glitters is gold, right? And then the last words are, and she's buying a stairway to heaven, and then everything in between I make up.
I'm laughing because if you watch the video of me playing Purple Haze, the last one, first time I've done that without lyrics. I left my lyric sheet too, which is part of my panic attack.
I will be completely. The only words I know to Purple Haze is Purple Haze.
It's like all of a sudden a Muppet got on stage with Jim.
Excuse me while I eat this fly. Oh no!
It really is a Muppet.
You remember that? That was
Jim would be better off as Animal. I think that's your spirit Muppet.
Yeah. So so there are songs like that I just make it up in between, and people are like, "Oh man, you do so well," and I'm like, oh, "I have no idea what I'm doing." But the truth is that if I was able to fool him, and he's a good guitar player, he goes, "I know how to improvise." He goes, "Matter of fact, I don't do it rote. I can't rote do it." And he goes, "And you can do the song like that." And I go, "Well, that's because I learned the solo, and then I go, okay, these parts that are tripping me up, I'm just going to make my own." That's pretty much how it started. When I was a kid, I would go like, my heroes were, the Beatles and stuff like that. And the Beatles were relatively easy. I mean, you can learn the solos of the Beatles relatively easily. If you want a place to start, a jumping point, Beatles is a great place to start. Especially the early stuff. when they didn't let Harrison really feel it out. Plus, you got to remember he was what?
Yeah,
18,
but they
17
didn't
back
do it
then?
because the egos of those other two Beatles.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, there was. As a matter of fact, isn't there a bass solo on something? And Harrison was pretty pissed about that because McCartney went in and put a bass solo on it. It was one of the songs. He put a bass solo
Yeah,
over
I
his,
think so.
over his
Yeah,
solo.
there was a lot of that kind of crap going on in that band. They really did not respect him. The lyric that was very much a lyrics first band, and everything else second.
Yes, especially in the beginning. Especially in the
So-
beginning, it was all there. And by the end, nobody cared. They were like, you know what? We're going to break up in a little while. We don't tour together anymore. We can't stand being in the same room.
Yeah, it should have ended
so
by the
they
time they
did-
got there. But they say the best albums are
that's
done
great
under
stuff.
tension, and the Beatles' best records were
Yeah.
done under tension. So
Fleetwood Mac's Rumors is a great
Deep
example
Purple's
of that.
Who Do We Think We Are, where we couldn't even
Who
be
Do
in
We
the
Think We
same
Are?
room. Like they couldn't even be in the same building. Or
Yeah.
the second Guns N' Roses record, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, where they couldn't even like they were literally calling each other on the phone and being like, hey, I really like this. I really like this solo. Can you hold that last note out another 4 bars?
Yep. Yep. And yet their best
a
album,
lot of people
right?
consider it to be their
double
best effort, and in the sense of like it being a complete like record unto itself, and not trying to retread any ground that they were stealing from other artists or whatever. A lot of people say that the first Guns album is very similar to a lot of Nazareth stuff. I'm not super familiar with Nazareth, but I could definitely see like some influence there. And
yeah, but I mean, you could probably go through several bands like that, talk about how tensions and things that were wrong in their life. I mean, Clapton did some of his best writing. Unfortunately, the death of his son, Tears of Heaven, which I think is probably one of the most beautiful
Watchtower.
songs.
Jimi Hendrix was pissed because Steve Winwood could not play the rhythm part he wanted, so he just took the acoustic guitar from him. He's like, "Here, I'll do it."
Yeah, that's right. Was it Steve Winwood, or was it was it? I know that another person was playing 12-string on there. Brett Mason, not Brett Mason.
Yeah, it's gonna be like that might be the wrong decade.
Yeah, Brett Mason was not even. I mean, he's probably my age, so he was like 5 when I came. Who the heck was it? Brett.
There was a bunch of different players on that record. Electric Ladyland had some really good talent on it.
He had a big hit. Now I'm dead. But you know what? Would surprise me the other day was I did not know Black Magic Woman was a Fleetwood Mac song first. I always thought Black Magic Woman
wasn't it Peter Green Fleetwood Mac though?
Peter Green Fleetwood Mac. Yep. That was the.
Did you think it was a Neil Schon Fleetwood? Or did you think it was a Neil Schon Santana song?
No. I figured it was. I thought it was Santana.
Can we talk
Santana,
about before as we go to the outro here? Can we talk about Neil Schon trying to usurp Carlos Santana out of his own band?
That was one of the
I still can't believe that that's like a legit
life.
thing. Oh, and then apparently Neil Schon came out this week or something and said that like he greases all his guitar necks with bologna grease. So
I think he's full of bologna grease.
Like that's disgusting if he does.
I think he just freaking was.
I think so too. I think that was like how can I screw with this guy? You know,
find out how many idiots are going to go out and go, well, Neil Schon
but you know
does
what?
it.
That plays into the central point of what we've been discussing for the last half hour, which is that look, if you follow and worship these people, they can take you for a loop, and it has happened. Look at Jimmy Page telling people that he was using all these different amps over the years, and it turned out it was like a modified Supro.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Somebody else was they made up a story because people kept asking him. You know, I think it was what's his name from the Stones, Keith Richards, talking about his tone on that. Down,
right.
down,
Unsatisfaction. Yeah.
He couldn't remember.
Yeah. Well, and then that part was like actually supposed to be the dub for the horns, and then they were going to come back in and bring the horns in over the top of it.
They were going to come back and put horns over it. That was his objective.
Yeah,
all
and
he
it
was
just
doing was
got
trying to put a
printed the
horn
way
down.
it was, and the rest is history. But
you got to give him credit for freaking making shit up, because he just
yeah, well, and that's that's like I've heard other people say stuff like that too, where they'll just throw something out there like, we recorded this with a Princeton, like a little Silverface champ or something, and then you find out later like, no, they had like a Marshall stack with the reason for that. Like,
I mean, there are happy accident funny things that are
and I think some of it's drug and alcohol related too, where it's just like I can't remember what the hell we did. Like,
a lot of these people, like Ace Frehley, his parts were overdubbed. His parts were done by somebody else.
There's liner notes for Deep Purple's In Rock.
Yep.
Where Ian Gilliam, they asked him to contribute, what his experience is like when they were recording In Rock, and he's like, "Well, I honestly don't know," because he's like, "I was too drunk."
Oh yeah. Well, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden, so I mean, I can see that.
Clearly they were transcribing.
The guy he was like 19 years old, and he was so freaking out of his mind that he couldn't say "In the Garden of Eden." And I got it.
Too good.
You go back and dub the words "In the Garden of Eden," it kind of makes more sense.
We've talked about Iron Butterfly a lot this episode, it seems like.
The one-hit wonder.
They had 2 hits, I think.
Did they?
Actually, yeah, but that was the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of, I loved that song, and that was one of those ones that was so
like 27 minutes long or something.
Is it 9.5 minutes long?
Yeah, it was 2, because it came out as a single, and it was both sides of the single.
Let's see, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida is how long?
The Slayer version.
The Slayer version. 17 minutes. You're right.
Yeah, it's long, man.
Oh, that's right. It was 2 sides of a 9-minute single.
Right. That's what I just said. Yeah. And it was like looped. It wasn't even like a beginning and an end. It was just like, here's the song.
You got to give him credit though. He was emo before emo was big. He was not emo, but like Soundgarden, Pearl Jam type.
It's only 8:30 and I'm about to fall asleep.
It's 9:30 here, and I'm so.
All right, so let's recap. Phil X, bad. flooding in Condo, bad.
Yes,
John Mayer, bad. Katana Mark II, bad. Having dreams of being another guitar player who's already famous, bad. And with that, I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And tonight we have been Practical Guitarists.
Practical Guitarists.